Welcome to the Greenfield Report with Henry R. Greenfield, your gateway to understanding today's geopolitical landscape. With 50 years of experience across 10 countries, Henry shares expert insights on world affairs, offering practical solutions and engaging guest perspectives. Dive into the Greenfield Report for lively discussions on the issues that matter.
This is Henry R. Greenfield for the Greenfield Report with Part 2 of America at 250. From glory at the dawn of the millennium in 2000, to crashing in the 2008 economic crisis, to coming back again, then to crashing once more in the global COVID pandemic, and again rising, and now perhaps yet another crash in a cycle that seems to have become part of America's new DNA. Or can the cycle be broken? Or is it inevitable that the pendulum of change is about to reverse? To answer this fundamental question on what happened, why, and what is the future of the most powerful nation on the planet, let us go back to that glorious moment, the dawn of a new millennium. While the United States was clearly the sole superpower in 2000, what about the former Soviet Union and its empire? Many of them by that time had joined the EU or NATO, and in Russia, the former Soviet Union was attempting to emerge from a total disaster. Out of seemingly nowhere, a young former minor KGB agent, Vladimir Putin, was able to engineer a takeover of a country that seemingly had little future. But Russia had fallen so far to become an afterthought, a global player no longer, that at that time no one noticed or really cared. More importantly was to make sure rogue elements of the former Soviet Union did not steal nukes and start some sort of World War III. Thus, places like Ukraine were stripped of their numerous nuclear weapons, stockpiled all over their country in return for a guarantee of security that was only to last a few years. Do you remember that moment? Do you recall where you were in the year 2000? Y2K had just been shown to be a false alarm, nothing more than a blip. The dot-com revolution was peaking. Everything seemed possible. Clinton had beaten his impeachment, just barely, but his approval ratings were still in the 60s as the American people viewed it as a silly dalliance, one that millions of men had made but fortunately had never been caught. But then his hand-picked successor, the self-proclaimed inventor of the internet, Al Gore, decided Clinton was too toxic and ran a campaign as far away as he could from Clinton's overwhelmingly successful 8 years. And 8 years of unbridled success, of a still powerful industrial might dominating the world, of easily winning minor skirmishes in Bosnia, and most astonishingly in balancing the U.S. federal budget. Even in 1993, in weathering an attack on the World Trade Center Twin Towers, a Democrat no less, leading America to economic, political, technological, global domination, and yes, glory. And then the campaign didn't go so well for Gore. On election night, he lost his own state of Tennessee, and it all came down to Florida and the infamous hanging chads. A few hundred votes would decide what was to be the direction and future of America, and by extension, as the dominant global superpower, the world. Laborious recounts proved inconclusive, and on December 12, 2000, the Supreme Court of the United States, in the first of what has proven to be a steady stream of conservative opinions that have changed the course of the United States, the rights of individuals, of abortion for women, of gay rights, of many, many areas in the lives of America, ruled the election was over. Even with absolutely everything going for him, Al Gore had somehow lost to George W. Bush, the son of George H.W. Bush, and it appeared a dynasty might be in the making, with his brother, Florida Governor Jeb Bush, waiting in the wings. 2001 broke on the horizon, and like a movie or a fairy tale, all was well. Little did the new president know, but the group responsible for the botched attack on the World Trade Center in New York in 1993 was planning a more audacious, and this time perfect plan to change the course of history. In those early days of the new millennium, I, along with millions of others, were leaping into our little pieces of the dot-com revolution. We could see it topping out, but we felt like we had to get in there before the boom turned into the inevitable bust. It started to unravel by early 2001, and while I had taken a position coming back from Australia to the United States with a dot-com company, quickly it folded, and I was again back in Asia with yet another dot-com company, a darling pursuing my own version of the glory of the future, when the World Trade Center towers were hit by two large planes fully loaded with people and fuel. Simultaneously, the Pentagon was set ablaze with yet another suicide plane, and a fourth, a planned attack on the White House, was only prevented by the passengers who stormed the cockpit, and the United Flight 93 went down in a field in Pennsylvania, killing, as it did in every crash on that day, all aboard. The world was in shock. How would the world's sole superpower, the great United States, respond? Bush gathered his team around him and created a new path, one the Americans had never taken before in all their 225 years, and they labeled it preemptive war. The so-called neocons said the United States must use this moment to take out rogue regimes, especially the hated Saddam Hussein of Iraq, who had taunted the Western world with his dreams of conquest and nuclear bombs. At the same time, it was determined that the despised Taliban regime of Afghanistan, with a draconian Sharia law of cutting off hands, heads, public stoning to death, and the total debasement and control of women, was where al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden, was now based. Bush and his team let loose a powerful military campaign, with America quickly wiping out Saddam and also overthrowing the Taliban, with Bush landing on an aircraft carrier, announcing the end of the war in just a few short weeks. It was a triumph that was, however, short-lived. Like so many campaigns in the Middle East, and especially in Afghanistan, where the Russians and so many others had met their demise, the Americans were all of a sudden in a guerrilla war, a war of attrition, of who can you trust, in lands where tribal and religious zealotry went hand in hand. America's treasure quickly was squandered in both Iraq and Afghanistan, which eventually went on for 20 years. Yes, the longest war in U.S. history. At home, Bush had no time for anything other than his wars. Ill-fated, ill-advised, ill-conceived, these wars dragged on and on and on. American industry decided it was the time, and there were no presidential policies to place the retention of U.S. jobs and industry on the table. It was to become the decade of the entire outsourcing of the bulk of U.S. industrial jobs, and by and large, they went to China. As one who participated in the outsourcing to China, as did, to my dismay, my regret, in fighting back to stop it, yet I and so many others failed, as American industry seemed to delight in closing factories in the United States and giving away their technology to China. For me, it was the proverbial 20 pieces of silver in return for selling out of American and the American labor and the American people and the American economy. For the industrial titans, almost all Republicans, it was getting rid of old factories they had not invested in decades and getting instant mega profits for almost no work and no worries in China. In the 2000s under Bush, up to 8 million jobs were lost and tens of thousands of factories closed. But that was not even the biggest story of the decade, economically speaking. The most amazing economic collapse in U.S. history happened seemingly overnight as the U.S. housing market leveraged and out of control, again with no one watching or caring in the Bush administration, and the financial industry, based pyramid-like on scams with no ethos other than go, 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 like the pre-Depression roaring 1920s, suddenly began to unravel and then precipitously collapse. As we rolled into year after year of war, of jobs disappearing, of low to no investment in U.S. industry, or a housing market so cheap, where loans were given out without proper documentation, as regulations had been lowered in the Clinton administration, all of a sudden, the U.S. was faced with disasters on all sides. While Beijing was celebrating its newfound wealth, compliments of the United States and Europe and Japan and others, investing trillions into China, taking it all from their industries, enforcing, actually pushing China to take more. More money, more technology, more jobs. The U.S. financial markets in 2008 suddenly began to totter and then collapse. Nothing seemed to hold up. Housing, mortgages, financial institutions, all falling apart, all at once. World-famous brokerage firms were liquidated overnight, losing tens of billions. In the midst of the carnage, which was especially for the housing market to get way, way worse, stepped in the Democratic Party nominee for 2008. A biracial man, half white, half black, from Chicago, who swept through the primaries, beating Hillary Clinton, grabbing the nomination and the inspiration of a nation, and just like that, America had its first black president. Perhaps Fukuyama was right after all. America, in crisis, was turning to a black man to save them, and save them he did. Obama saved the auto industry in my home state of Michigan. He saved the financial institutions. Within 2 years, he even passed the first health care plan since Medicare in the 1960s to provide insurance for all. Was America back on the road to success? Were the aughts, as they became known, just a blip in over-excess in just about everything? Seemingly not. As in 2010, Obama and the Democrats were crushed in the midterms by a new movement named the Tea Party, and it would be 6 more long, hard years for Obama to gut it out and to try to keep his programs. In the end, he resorted to stating, "I may not have the majorities in Congress, but I do have a pen." With that pen, he signed executive orders, but these were to be short-lived, as a new power was rising, that of a movement to change America. As he took the most famous escalator ride down in history, the golden escalator of the Trump Tower in 2015, Donald J. Trump, a real estate and TV personality, created MAGA to make America great again. Once again, while the Democrats argued and finally selected a very tainted Hillary Clinton, who fully expected to be the first woman president, she forgot that she needed to campaign everywhere and not just where she felt like showing up. The famed blue wall collapsed, and Trump was elected by yet another minority of the votes, but his electoral count, which we have recounted in Part 1, where the South and rural states have a disproportionately favored situation, were more than enough to crush Clinton. Yet another new era had arrived, and along with it came streaming and the race for podcasts and every form of internet communication and interference from inside and outside the United States, including that upstart Putin, who by then had taken Crimea and was ready for more. All participated in getting Trump elected. The era of Donald J. Trump, which we are still living in fact totally immersed in, had arrived. No one had any idea at that point what it would mean for the United States, and by the second term, for the entire world. While Trump had a lot of ideas, he selected well-respected leaders of industry, military, and the political establishment for his first cabinet. 4 years of guardrails protected the world at least, though not the American people, from whatever excesses Trump wanted to visit upon them. As 2020 approached, Trump was taken on in the middle of the COVID, the worst pandemic since the Great Flu epidemic after World War I, which had killed tens of millions, and that had been descended upon the United States and the world. Trump's efforts were to no avail. He could not stop the pandemic, and he lost to a somewhat housebound Joe Biden, the last relic of the Obama administration, dating his career all the way back to the 1960s. Trump could not accept this. and he refused to give in with his claims of a stolen election, and he lost 61 court cases as he tried desperately to overturn that election. In a final desperate measure, he assembled a MAGA army and turned them loose on the U.S. Capitol, where several died, and Trump, losing, was left with no choice. Out of cards, as he would put it, he flew Air Force One out of Washington, D.C. to the strains of I Did It My Way. Yes, that good old karaoke song, that seemed to be the end of Donald Trump. But was it? America and the world breathed a sigh of relief, but it was to be a short-lived one. While Biden and the Democrats toiled away on programs to extend old New Deal and Great Society ideals and programs, Trump continued to insist that the election was stolen. Then, as the 2024 election cycle was in full swing, a fateful debate between Trump and Biden led to a last-minute switch to Kamala Harris, the first black woman to run for president. And this time, a majority actually did vote for Trump. He was triumphant. He was back. And this time, he would only have loyalists to make sure he got whatever he wanted. In the approximately 500 days since January 20th, 2025, and the dawn of Trump 2.0, it has been a veritable wasteland of smashing the system and remaking it in Trump's image. But this time, the rest of the world would not escape his wrath. NATO was immediately under fire as Trump threatened to withdraw. Agencies such as WHO, the World Health Organization, were abandoned, and within months, the post-World War II world order, created by the United States, run by the United States, triumphed by the United States, was summarily abandoned and declared dead. Biden's return to normality was in reality not a return, but only a respite between Trumpian assaults on the world. Tariffs were imposed, liberation days declared, and when that didn't work, bombs were dropped in several places around the world. Regime change became a byword as Trump overthrew the hated Maduro in Venezuela, literally capturing him and putting him on trial in New York City for alleged drug and other crimes. And emboldened Trump, who failed at stopping the Ukraine-Russian war, but however had declared he had solved 8 wars around the world and then attacked Iran in an undeclared war with his partner Israel. Once again, preemptive war from a Republican president. Once again, to be mired in the desert sands of the Middle East. Once again, but this time Trump would not put boots on the ground, but the strategy of regime change had backfired. And the Strait of Hormuz was closed, and overnight, 20% of the world's oil was held captive. This brings us to today, the 250th birthday celebration of the Declaration of Independence of the United States. A divided, partisan-ridden country where not attending the Great American Fair in Washington, D.C., and the other ill-fated projects, such as the botched repairing of the reflecting pool and the knockdown of the White House East Wing for Trump's personal billion-dollar ballroom, seemed to vie with the end of the war and open corruption by Trump that is lauded by his supporters who say, well, everyone does it. But before we go, we must ask, what about the rest of the world? We alluded to China, which was nothing at the beginning of the millennium, but with those trillions and a powerful leader in Xi Jinping, China has quickly become the main rival of the United States in just about every area, including military, as well as, of course, economically and even politically, with initiatives such as the Belt and Road investment schemes around the world. The strategies of containment by Biden and others, abandoned by Trump in favor of one-on-one deals, where China and Iran and others seemingly always get the best of Trump. While at the same time, the split media on Trump's side proclaims him the greatest in every category, while gas remains high at the pump and the economy languishes and Trump has the lowest approval ratings in history. So where, dear listeners, do we go from here? Is America going to weather the years of Trump 2.0, or will it continue to lose friends and gain enemies? Will the remake by Trump of everything into his image continue, or will the Democrats win in the midterms to blunt and turn the tide? Will there be, in fact, a pendulum swing to the left with the newly minted and winning DSA, or Democratic Socialists of America? Those are the questions that we will be exploring in our next episode, where we look at the future of the United States and its role in the world in the final years of Trump, and how, if any influence, will the DSA have, and will that pendulum swing back to provide more to the people, or will the military-industrial complex, and as Bernie Sanders would say, the billionaires and system of controls that Trump and his allies have put into place alter America for the foreseeable future? This is Henry R. Greenfield for the Greenfield Report, wishing you a happy 4th of July, the 250th celebration of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and looking forward to what should prove to be one of the most exciting and consequential midterm elections in United States history.
Thank you for joining us on the Greenfield Report with Henry R. Greenfield. We hope today's insights into the ever-shifting geopolitical landscape have sparked your curiosity and broadened your perspective. Stay connected with us for more in-depth discussions and expert solutions. Until next time, keep exploring the world beyond the headlines.